What's up, ninjas? Today we're going to be continuing vibe coding with Roo. In the previous video, we have already done research and we've also done some planning, and we stopped there, and now we're going to continue with implementation using Roo. All right, let's continue. So this is where we left off. We had essentially did this task over here, help me to plan a project that includes a PRD, architecture, and task files. And we've successfully set up the task files. The next thing that you want to do for implementation, this is in terms of prompting, is actually pretty easy. You just got to pick one task and go with it. So let's close the other files. Close this and just go with tasks. And let's see, the 3D sphere thing, that might be interesting, but it's not really Injective specific. So I think let's do these two things here, right? So let's go for task blockchain and say, I want it to do the hard hat setup and develop smart contracts. So let's just prompt it with that. First things I'm going to do is change it to code, which is a Roo mode, and then select the model if I want to choose a separate one, and then said, please implement All right, so it has said I'm going to do these commands in order to start a hard hat project. Let's go run. All right, could not resolve dependency, a peer dependency. So that looks like it potentially could cause some problems. All right, and then I see here the Git repo here, too many active changes. That's probably because it needs to do a git ignore. So I'm actually going to let it do this, continue churning away, and then in the background, I'm going to look at what is implemented, which should be within SRC. So it's got to git ignore. So where is it? Aha, it has ignored my instructions in the rules file. So sometimes that happens, right? So blockchain needs to go under SRC. Unfortunately, it has missed that requirement. All right, I missed that one over there. That I should have rejected that command. Okay, let's create this hard hat file. Testnet, Sentry, EVM, Injective network. I think that works, but it isn't the one that's recommended. The one that's recommended is this one. So I'm gonna open up my notes file, and then for implementation, I'm gonna do for RPC. This one looks okay to me. Chain ID is incorrect. Chain ID should be 1439. Right. I'll let it proceed anyway and correct it later. Sure. All right, so it's going to create an NFT. It has ERC721 and the same with URI storage and ownable. So let's check what it's inserted. Okay, so I've got the name and symbol. Mid price, good. It actually didn't hard code it, it actually put it as a constant. Maybe you can consider making the price a variable later on. So tasks, I'm gonna open my notes and go with continue to review that. Okay, so it's overridden the function with the URI. Okay, so I assume that this is ERC 165. Probably should add a comment for that. Okay, so I'll let it save that file. Okay, let's see whether it compiles. Aha, I predict that there is going to be some issues with the peer dependencies as well. There you go. That's most likely a peer dependency issue. There you go. Usually indicates a version mismatch, etc. All right. Aha, so package JSON and notes. So say okay, save that file. Run that command. Compile. So it finally has run the compiler. Okay. So it's saying, it's a warning. So it's saying that token URI is shadowing one of the inherited values. Great. Good that it caught that. So it's just renaming the parameter. Okay, so it says task completed. I've successfully completed the setup hard hat project and develop smart contract tasks, etc., etc. Okay, great. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to show another way of vibe coding where instead of getting the AI to do everything for you, for example, previously I have essentially done this, right? Just copy pasted it here and say, hey, go make those changes. I'm going to do that as well, but I'm going to update the tasks file. I'm going to update the task file manually myself to include changes that I want to the process based on what I've seen here. Let's see, tasks dash blockchain. So what I'm going to do is, before I test the smart contract, I'd say deployment. Actually, while I'm typing, I'll do concurrency. So while it's churning on that one, I will type over here preliminary deployment testnet. All right, so I will save this file, and then now it's got the correct configuration. All right, so deploy to Injective testnet, and then I am also going to, what am I going to do next? All right, so it's going to make these changes to package JSON. Great. And next I am going to do deploy to Injective testnet, verify on block scout. Great. And it's also added the dev docs comments as well for some of the functions. For some reason, these ones it hasn't commented, but that's fine. Those aren't the custom functions. All right, let's compile again. Okay, I think that is great. I'm gonna do some manual stuff. Right, so I haven't added anything yet, so mv blockchain to src, and so the new task will start from there. Interestingly, it hasn't updated the task list. Right, so it's reading this file now. Great. Save that file. And task completed. So now I'm going to save this updated file, close these modified files, and they should exist in the new one. So now let's do git status, right? And I think I need to manually make sure that the git ignore file, yep, /node_modules is updated. All right, so now this blockchain subdirectory its node modules do not. Actually, let's do all of node modules. So now I won't be getting the too many files to track error. All right. Then the next thing I'll do at this point is to create a new task and then continue from there. And all I need to do is say, in task blockchain, please do preliminary deployment, or whatever it is I felt like. Or I could do something as simple as implement all things within sprint 2. I could do a whole number of things to that effect. But that's it for the demo. I'm not going to build the entire project in this video, but I will perhaps show you the end outcome from this later on. For now, let's get back to the video. So we have planned and we have researched in Ask Roo mode, and we have planned using the architecture Roo mode in the previous videos, and in this video we have implemented using the code Roo mode. So that brings us to the end of this video, but before we end, we are going to do a quiz. What is the purpose of having different Roo modes? I'll give you a second for that one. The answer is the first two. What is incorrect is that each Roo mode does not use different context windows. As you saw earlier on, you have to explicitly start a new task each time. But within that task, for example, with this one, I started off in the architect mode, and then midway through, once the PRD and the task file and the architecture document were completed, then I switched to code mode and continued on within the same chat. So you can use different modes with different contexts, but you can also use different modes within the same context, and Roo doesn't restrict you from doing that. All right, each Roo mode has different system prompts. That is essentially what the rules files are for, and you can actually import and export them. And each Roo mode uses different LLMs. You can configure it to use different LLMs if you want to, or you can set them to use the same LLM. That's completely up to you, and you control them using this over here, right? So it's actually independent. All right, vibe coding works best when you use a single sentence prompt and one-shot it, or you iterate using multiple prompts, and you use MCP servers. Which ones? Give you a second. And the answer is the second and third ones. So these two are kind of opposite approaches. This, I would say, is true vibe coding in the sense that it's fully vibes based. The form of vibe coding that you saw is a bit of a hybrid. It's a hybrid between vibe coding and traditional software engineering, where you do all the work yourself. And the hybrid approach tends to work the best because, as you can see, it made many mistakes and human judgment was necessary to intervene. Otherwise, you just get something that might be what you asked for, but also has lots of gaps or may not even be what you asked for in the end. Intervening in intermediate stages to do traditional software engineering stuff, that would be good. And finally, when a vibe coding tool or generative AI tool has access to special purpose-built use cases implemented in deterministic ways even, not necessarily using generative AI, that's great. So you saw injective search documentation that was done via MCP in this case. You could also use other MCPs. For example, if I had attempted the 3D modeling thing, I could have installed or configured an MCP server that is specialized for that. Maybe there's a Blender one or something that's specific to that particular type. Maybe there's a 3JS one. I could have installed those and gotten better results than I had if I had not. And which one should I use? Well, I could Google it, or I could go switch back to the research Roo mode and ask it which ones it would recommend. So yeah, those are the options. And that is the end of Roo Vibe Coding, right? So that brings us to the end of the video. And thank you very much for watching. See you in the next